Hello, hello, hello. Welcome back to Candle Crime Time, or if this is your first time here, welcome to Candle Crime Time. My name is Shanta, and what we do here on this channel is tell the stories of those who may have faded away from your memory or the stories that you may have actually never heard of. Like today's story, we will discuss Miss Carethia Curry, a teenager who life was taken tragically at a very early age by a very disturbed and very evil individual. I know I've been gone for a while. However, there had been some things that I wanted to take care of and get situated before I brought you back another video. I wanted to make sure that I was in the mindset to do so. And as you can see, I got a new look. I am no longer a redhead. I decided to trim a little bit and go brown. I don't know what it is about brown hair on a black woman, but I just wanted to be a part of that because it looks so good on me. Let me know what you think about it down below. And yeah, that's enough of this intro. You're not here to talk about me and why I have not posted in the last few weeks. So without further ado, let's tell Carethia Curry's story. Carethia Curry was born on August 13, 1978, in Tuscaloosa, Alabama, to parents Carolyn Curry O'Neill and Curtis O'Neill. She also had two sisters, a younger sister named Nicole and an older one named Margaret, and she also had one brother, aptly named Curtis Jr. Carethia's upbringing was plagued with trauma. At age 10, she witnessed Nicole be fatally struck by a car when Nicole attempted to cross 30th Avenue coming home from school. And because of this traumatic experience, it plagued Carethia with nightmares in the years that followed. While her family attempted to piece back together their lives, another tragedy struck their family. Just a couple of years later, when Carethia was 12, her older sister, 13-year-old Margaret, was murdered. The backstory is Margaret was hanging out with her friends that day, and later that day, her and her friends met up with some older boys. One of the boys had a car, and so the girls got in and took a drive with them. One of the boys was named Maurice Jones, who was 20 years old, and he was out on bond at that time for his role in a fatal drive-by shooting. Witnesses later said that they actually saw Maurice pointing his guns at kids in the car and that Margaret had told him to stop. Later on, Margaret's friends were dropped off at home around 9:45 p.m., but Margaret wasn't. Her lifeless body was found about 45 minutes after that, dumped on 35th Avenue. She had been shot in the head. Unfortunately, I was not able to find the outcome of this tragedy. Again, her family tried to rebuild their lives after this. A few years later, Carethia is now 17 and she was living with her mom when she discovered that she was pregnant. However, the details surrounding this pregnancy, like who the father was and other things about like how she felt about becoming a mom, was unknown. However, Carethia was very good with children. When she became old enough, she had often babysat for one of her mother's friends, a woman named Angela Burton's 5 children. Carolyn had become friends with Angela's sister, Felicia Scott, since grade school, which later developed into a friendship between Carolyn and Angela as well. When Felicia found out that Carethia was pregnant, she started to build a friendship with the pregnant teen. Felicia and Carethia started to spend more time together, with Carolyn and Angela even joining in sometimes on their outings. Felicia was only about 11 years older than Carethia and had already had 2 children from her previous marriage. In the year 1996, Felicia's sons were 8 and 6 years old. Despite Felicia having a complete hysterectomy, which is a surgical operation to remove all or part of a uterus, in 1993, Felicia was obsessed with having another baby. She was so obsessed with having another baby that she began telling her new boyfriend, Frederick Polion, and her other friends that she was actually pregnant by him. One day, January 31st, 1996, Felicia and Angela drove to Carolyn, who remember is Carethia's mother's house, in Tuscaloosa to pick her and Carethia up as they all had plans to go shopping for baby clothes. They were going to a small town which is just about half an hour away called Utah. At this time, Carethia was about 9 months pregnant and due literally any day, so she wanted to do the last minute preparations for the arrival of her baby. Felicia drove Carethia and Carolyn back home because they were tired from shopping earlier that day and wanted to take a rest. Felicia said that she needed to pick Frederick up to go cash a check, but she'd come back later to pick them up so they could go to Family Dollar. Angela said that she would see Felicia later as well because she had to go home. A little while later, Felicia did end up coming back to pick up Carolyn and Carethia so they could go to the Family Dollar. When they were done shopping, they went back to Felicia's apartment to eat some cake and just, hung out and talked as they usually did. Angela came over to Felicia's house with her children and her new boyfriend, Anthony. However, Anthony had refused to come into the apartment because he and Angela had gotten into an argument on the way over. The women and Angela's kids were all just hanging out in the apartment when Carethia and Felicia had made plans to go grab dinner. They had decided on pizza. Felicia had made a comment saying, quote, the two pregnant women are going to have pizza. However, this comment struck Carolyn as odd because she knew that Felicia had had a full hysterectomy just 3 years prior and just couldn't possibly be pregnant. But since Angela didn't react to the comment, Carolyn just kind of kept quiet. A little while after this, Felicia had to go pick her boys up from school, so she dropped Carolyn and Carethia off home and told Carethia that she would be back later to pick her up to go get their pizza that they had planned to get. And a few hours later, Felicia did return, so Carethia left, got in the car, and they went to go get the pizza. The next day, around February 1st, 1996, Carolyn had called Felicia's apartment because Carethia, a heavily pregnant teenager, had still not returned home. Fred is the one who answered the phone, and when Carolyn asked if Carethia was still there, he stated no, she's not, and that he doesn't know where she is. Frederick must have tipped Felicia off about this because hours later, Felicia called Carolyn to say that she had actually dropped Carethia off around 8:30 p.m. the night before and that she had no idea what Carethia did afterwards. However, Carolyn did not believe a word that Felicia was saying, and she demanded that Felicia actually tell her what she had done to her daughter. Felicia, however, insisted that she had no idea what happened to Carethia. Besides, how would she know? She was in Birmingham giving birth. Carolyn did question Felicia on how she was out of the hospital so soon if she had just given birth mere hours ago prior to this conversation. And Felicia replied with, she didn't have insurance, so she wasn't able to stay at the hospital any longer. However, Carolyn knew that Felicia was a bold-faced lie, and after they got off the phone, she immediately called the police to report Carethia missing. She also gave the police Felicia and Frederick's names and the address and told them that she believes that they had actually abducted Carethia. Officer Tony Everett was assigned to the case. When she initially received the case, she did not have much evidence to go on to investigate Felicia or Frederick, so she spent time following up on other leads for a few days. But after receiving the case, she had heard that there was a baby at Felicia's house. Remember, Felicia had told Carolyn the day after Carethia's disappearance that she ended up having a baby, and that's why she didn't know what happened to Carethia. But Carolyn didn't believe her ass because, as we stated before, Miss Felicia had a hysterectomy. So it was literally impossible for her to have had a baby. And she knew that Felicia had wanted one but couldn't have one. So Carolyn just thought that that was some fake alibi that Felicia had gave her. But when Carolyn came across the news that there actually was a live human baby at Felicia's house, she updated the kidnapping report because she believed that Felicia now had Carethia's baby. So, Officer Everett went to Felicia's house to investigate this claim, and Felicia stated that this baby was hers at Frederick's, and she gave the details of the prenatal care that she had received at the Tuscaloosa County Health Department. Felicia had a answer for everything, child. I mean, everything, including why she didn't have a birth certificate. She had said because she didn't give birth in the hospital, the certificate was processed differently, and there was a delay in the processing, but she assured that the birth certificate was on the way. Officer Everett then asked Felicia to sign the medical records release that allowed police to access her medical records, and her dumbass signed it. After Officer Everett left, a homicide detective was shortly assigned to the case because she and her supervisor felt that this was going to be more than just your average missing teens case. And boy, they were right. After a few days, Officer Everett finally received Felicia's medical records, where the hysterectomy was discovered. But by then, Felicia's ass had fled. She'd taken the baby, and she took her boys and went to her father's house down over in Georgia. Officer Everett went to question Felicia's family, starting with her sister Angela. And when Officer Everett asked Angela where Felicia was, Angela stated that she had no idea where Felicia was, as she had not seen her for a couple of days. Angela said that Felicia's two sons, and the baby had come by on February 1st to visit around 11 a.m. and had actually stayed the night, and then the next day on February 2nd, and she had not seen them since they left that day. Police had managed to track Felicia down in Atlanta, again at her father's house, where Felicia had insisted that the police had the incorrect information and that this baby that she has was hers. She had given birth to this baby in her car on the side of the road, and that is why the birth was not recorded anywhere. And when officers finally pressed Felicia a little bit harder, she had no choice but to crack and admit that the baby was Carethia's. But she stated that Carethia had given her this baby shortly after she had given birth. But of course, the police did not believe her because they knew that Carethia was missing since the beginning of this investigation. And they also knew that Felicia couldn't have any children, but she wanted children. Another child, I should say. Felicia was arrested for interference with children's custody, and she was transferred back to Alabama, where she was released on a $25,000 bond while she awaited trial. The baby, which was a girl, was taken to a hospital, and it was discovered that she was healthy and unharmed. She was transferred back to Alabama state custody until DNA results could prove that she was Carethia's baby. DNA results eventually came back and, of course, proved that the baby was Carethia's, and the custody was then given to the baby's biological father. I couldn't find his name anywhere. Newspaper publications also stated later on that the baby was given to Carethia's father, Curtis, who became the baby's primary guardian. While the baby was found, the investigation into Carethia's disappearance continued. Felicia had consented to her car being searched, where investigators had found evidence of a blood smear that had been missed, as well as evidence that blood had been cleaned up in the car, and they most likely found this out by probably using luminol. Investigators then went back to question Angela again, and this time she stated that Felicia, Frederick, and the baby came to her house on February 1st between 2 and 3 a.m., not 11 a.m. like she initially stated. She ended up changing her story again by stating she had no idea where Frederick or Felicia was that night. She continued to say that Frederick had called her worried because Felicia had not come home that night, and Angela stated that she had started calling hospitals after receiving Frederick's calls. But an investigation into that story did not match. There were no calls to any hospitals, and there was actually no call from Frederick. About 6 weeks later, after the disappearance of Carethia, a man was collecting some cans around a ravine, and he had stumbled upon a dark-colored garbage can that was duct taped. The man then called the police, and the garbage can was retrieved from the ravine, and when they unraveled the duct tape and opened up the garbage can, they discovered a body that was wrapped in New Kids on the Block bed sheets. Investigators believed that at this time they had unfortunately discovered Carethia, and then they sent the body for autopsy, where dental records did confirm that it was indeed Carethia Curry. During the autopsy, it was discovered that she had been shot twice in the head with a 25 caliber gun, and she was cut open from her breastbone down to her pubic bone. The time of death was estimated to be about 12 hours after she left her mother's house on January 31st to go get that pizza. Felicia's charge was now upgraded from interference of custody to murder, and a warrant was put out for her arrest. She was then charged with first-degree murder and held with no bond. She refused to answer any questions and didn't make any statements. Frederick was also arrested for murder, but he cooperated with investigators, and the story that he told was very, very gruesome. While we don't have the exact details of what transpired in Felicia's apartment when the two ladies returned for getting pizza back on January 31st, what we do know is that Carethia, of course, ended up with 2 gunshot wounds in the head, and that her baby girl was removed via a crude cesarean section, or C-section, with a razor blade, where she was cut from her breastbone all the way down to her pubic bone. Carethia was then left to bleed out while Felicia cut the umbilical cord, cleaned the baby, and then prepared to present the baby girl as her own. Felicia then drove to Birmingham to a hospital and told hospital staff that she had given birth and to look the baby over. A nurse had later testified that the umbilical cord looked like it had been cut in a way in which the person knew what they were doing. And then remember when Carolyn called Felicia's house to look for Carethia and they said that they didn't know where they were? Well, Carethia's body was in the trunk of Felicia's car. And after this phone call, Felicia and Frederick took the body to Angela's house, which was in a small town called Wylam, about 15 minutes outside of Birmingham, where neighbors saw Felicia's car outside of Angela's house around 7 a.m. and it didn't move all day. However, that didn't stop Felicia and Fred from being on the move, honey. They went to Walmart and a grocery store to buy duct tape, rope, and a garbage can. And when they returned, they were able to transfer Carethia's body from the truck and put it inside that garbage can with the New Kids on the Block sheets and duct taped it shut. They were somehow able to get the garbage can inside of Felicia's car, where they drove it to a ravine about a few miles away and dumped it, where she would lay undiscovered for 6 weeks. Frederick also pointed investigators to additional evidence not far from where Carethia's body was found. At the spot where Frederick pointed them, investigators found a pamphlet on high-risk pregnancies, and they also found razor blades, razor blade covers, rubber gloves, and C-section diagrams. Oh yeah, forgot to mention, Felicia swore she was having a high-risk pregnancy. Once Felicia was taken into custody upon the discovery of Carethia's body, Angela moved from Wylam to Tuscaloosa to her mother's house. She had to downsize from the home that she was in and got a storage unit. When investigators heard about this, they went to that storage unit, searched it, and found what was an interesting piece of evidence. And that evidence was an incomplete set of New Kids on the Block sheets, identical to the ones that Carethia was found wrapped in. Interestingly enough, neighbors had said prior to February Angela had owned a complete set of these sheets. So this means the police now had a link between Angela and Carethia. In April, an ex-boyfriend of Angela named Lee Curtis Turner gave a statement and according to Angela had called him around 10 p.m. on February 1st and told him to come over. He said about 15 minutes later when he got there, he saw Angela holding a baby and told her that the baby was Felicia and Frederick's. But he didn't see Frederick or Felicia. Their car was in the driveway, and he thought he had heard their voices, but he didn't see them. Lee knew, however, from previous conversations with Angela that Felicia couldn't have a baby, and Angela continued to say that Felicia needed help hiding a body. She also told him that she saw Felicia digging a hole in her backyard because Felicia had said someone tried to rape her, but when she fought back, she killed him. And Angela thought that Felicia was joking, but she told her to show me the body. And Felicia disgustingly opened the trunk to display the mutilated body of poor Carethia. Lee said after he heard this story, he told Angela to call the police, but Angela responded that she was scared because she did not want to lose her family. And she agreed that she would call the police eventually, and then he said he followed up with her the next day, and Angela told him that she couldn't talk because they were there to relay that Felicia was arrested and being held in a psychiatric hospital until she escaped and went to Georgia. But of course, we all know that Angela's ass never called the police, and Lee had also found that out. After this, Angela was also arrested for hindering an investigation. On Christmas Day in 1996, it had been announced that Felicia and Frederick had both been charged with capital murder and both could be facing the death penalty. They were both held without bond in Tuscaloosa County Jail while awaiting trial. Frederick's lawyer made a statement saying that he made a plea deal, but the judge on the case denied that a plea agreement had been reached, and the judge also refused to suppress statements Frederick supposedly made after the plea deal. Felicia, Frederick, and Angela all had separate trials, with Frederick's trials happening first. His charges were murder, kidnapping, and hindering an investigation. His defense attorney stated that Frederick's involvement happened after Carethia was already deceased, making him innocent of the murder and kidnapping charges. They also stated that though he was involved with the disposal of Carethia, he had no idea the contents of the garbage cans that she was placed in. Once he found out, he feared that it was too late for him to contact police and feared the repercussions of his actions. On December 15, 1997, the jury acquitted him of the murder charge, but found him guilty of kidnapping, which carried a minimum 10-year sentence but a maximum of life in prison. On January 28, 1998, Frederick was sentenced to 20 years in prison on the kidnapping charge. Next was Felicia Scott's case, which began mid-September 1998. In her defense, stated that Frederick was the one who actually killed Carethia and that she only helped cover it up out of fear. Her attorneys also stated that she was scared of Fred and suffered from post-traumatic stress disorder, or PTSD. Felicia also got on testified in her own defense. She stated that she took Carethia out for pizza and then brought Carethia back to her apartment. She then said that they were both watching TV in the living room when Fred came home. Fred went into the kitchen, and then a little while later, Carethia also went into the kitchen. Felicia then said she heard a popping sound and then decided to check on where the sound came from when she discovered that Carethia was lying in a pool of blood on the floor in the kitchen. She then claims that she thought Carethia had fallen and hit her head. She said that she told Fred that they should take Carethia to the hospital, and he told her no and sent her to the bathroom to calm herself down. She says she wished she had gotten out of the bathroom, but when she came back into the kitchen, she saw Fred using a butcher's knife to cut the baby out. She then says that after this, she has no memory of what happened next, but the next day she does remember is seeing a newborn baby in the car the next day. Felicia says that Fred ordered her to go to the hospital to say that the baby was hers so they could get a birth certificate. She then said Fred threatened her, and she was so scared to the point where she had thoughts of self-deletion. When asked why did she keep making statements about being pregnant, she said that she was misunderstood because she was really excited that Fred's ex-girlfriend was having a baby and that she was excited about becoming a stepmother. This was disputed because witnesses said that Felicia only spoke of being pregnant, and not only being pregnant, but having a high-risk one as well. On September 26, 1998, Felicia sat motionless as the jury foreman read the verdict of guilty of capital murder. The jury recommended a life sentence rather than the death penalty, and the judge agreed with the jury. And on December 14, 1998, she was formally sentenced to life in prison without the possibility of parole. Just wanted to pop in real quick and say that Angela also had a trial for the hindering an investigation charge, and during her trial, Lee Curtis Taylor and another one of her exes testified against her. Lee had testified about seeing Carethia's body in the trunk of her car, which indicated that Angela also knew about Carethia's whereabouts but had lied to the police whenever she spoke to them. And she was convicted on that charge and sentenced to 17 years in prison, but her first appeal was denied when she appealed it, and the conviction was upheld. However, she appealed again, and that was granted due to her attorney successfully defending that Angela lying did not directly hinder the investigation, so she was acquitted of that charge and released from jail. An update to this case is Frederick has since served his sentence and has been released. Felicia is still serving her life sentence at the Tutwiler prison in Wetumpka, Alabama. Her appeals have been denied and she will never get out. As far as Carethia's daughter, she was raised by Carethia's family and is now an adult living her wonderful best life. And so that'll do it today for Carethia's story. I was very utterly disgusted when I first came across this case because something is really, really wrong with Felicia and her man. I don't even want to give him the dignity of remembering his name right now. But Carethia did not deserve what happened to her. She was just a teenager looking forward to being a mom, and her life and her baby was just taken away from her. I think that Felicia deserves what she has. Honestly, she shouldn't even be here. But that's neither here nor there. And I just hope that her family has just been able to try to help put the pieces back together in their lives for such a tragic, tragic loss. Of course, as always, I am more interested in hearing what you have to say about this case. What are your thoughts? Like, if you have any at all, please do not forget to like, comment, subscribe, and share if you'd like. And I will see you all in my next one. Bye-bye.